So, head on over to Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles and tell Lionel you heard about it on KBLA Talk 1580.
We going. My pants poster sad. We going ultra. Yeah. We going ultra black. I got a toast to that. We don't fold the crack. We going. Occasion we rose to that. Going postal. We going ultra black. Watching the global change. Hopping the coldest range. Hit boy on the beat. This poster slap. We going ultra black. We going. Rhythm and blues, pop, rock, soul to jazz, till my toes attack. How I look being told, I'm not supposed to brag. Nobody fault, I tell the truth, I know it's facts. We ultra black, gray stone, skin tone, but multi that. Multiple colors, we coming all shades, mocha black. Except where I'm at and not fight me on it.
Mocha Black, happy Juneteenth from KBLA Talk 1580. Do not forget to go on KBLA1580.com and get your seats. All the festivities start tonight. Our 4th anniversary is tomorrow, but we're starting a day early with Tavis Smiley doing the climate justice well-being thing. I've got a symposium, State of Black Women in LA, on Saturday. We got a party on Juneteenth. And, of course, the Empowerment Congress event. All that can be found at KBLA1580.com. There are a few seats left, believe it or not. So do your thing and sign up. I'm excited because look who's here. A professor in the UCLA Department of Social Welfare. I think that something is telling me this is an old bio. He is an organizer. That's not the right title. I know better than that. It is? That's right. Okay, professor, UCLA Department of Social Welfare. You be moving so fast. He's an activist scholar from Inglewood. And he got his doctorate in social cultural studies and education program at UC Berkeley. He's published in Abolition, a journal of insurgent politics, the Journal of Critical Studies in Higher Education and Student Affairs, and much more. Dr. David Turner, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So happy to be back.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for coming in person. It's always energizing, and folks love it because you can see Dr. Turner with me on YouTube. Man, I feel like it's a whole new era since the last time I saw you.
Oh my God. I mean, between fires and fascism, it's been a lot.
A little something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little something.
To say the absolute least.
Did we have a different president last time you were here? I think we did.
Probably.
I think we had a different president.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had the fires yet.
No. We did not. And also there weren't tornadoes that people didn't get warnings for. And the military wasn't occupying an American city. So here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Since you mentioned that, I mean, let's start there. You know, you're an abolitionist and a scholar. And so you have always been very unvarnished in your view of the way that our country functions. Right, in terms of living up to the Constitution and the promise of what we can be, what we say we are. It seems like we've moved away from that even further. You're talking about fascism. How do you view it? Do you view it as a crisis, a change, or a continuum, or how do you see it?
Well, I think to quote Black Panther and former organizer George Jackson, fascism has been here for decades. I think communities of color, Black communities, Native communities, Latinx communities, Asian communities have known, right, American fascism for years. In fact, right, the European fascism that gave birth to the Third Reich, to Mussolini's regime, etc., they learned how to do fascism from America. Right. So we've been here for a while. I think this is, use like a video games analogy, right? Like this is sort of the final form or the last stand for like white supremacy, imperialism, and fascism that we're in now. Right.
So how do you define fascism then? Because, I mean, you know, it's like people who say, oh, we're about to have a constitutional crisis or we're approaching fascism. And many people feel that there has been a change, and we are more, well, at least more oligarchical. So what's your definition of fascism?
I think for me, the definition of fascism is being able to use and enact a deeply humane and repressive regime in order to satiate the appetite of, like, not only capitalists and oligarchs, but also to enact these deeply inhumane policies and practices on particular groups of people in order to support the country status quo, right? To try to put it succinctly, or to try to make it succinctly, or in, I guess, like, regular, just super regular terms, right? Like the people who are most in power using people who are not in power, right, to scapegoat them in order to consolidate and maximize their power, right? And America has been in the process of doing this, right, since the Emancipation Proclamation, and has not stopped. And has not stopped enacting this. And one of the biggest challenges that we face today, right, is making sure that we can not only fight back against this regime, but that we begin to shine a light on truth. I think one of the biggest tools of fascism is propaganda, right? Is being able, right, to tell people what they think reality is, when in fact actual reality is not that. To give a very brief example, when the propaganda is that immigrants are running amok in the street, right, and that we need to do something about these quote unquote immigrants, when that is the rhetoric that fascists are using in order to justify these, ICE raids where people are getting kidnapped at graduations, right? Like that's deeply problematic and violent, right? When we're talking about the truth versus the truth versus what fascists create as reality, the truth of the matter is that the vast majority of people who are immigrants are not the ones committing crime. In fact, right, like you are more likely to be engaged or impacted by the criminal justice system, or by like some kind of violent activity by another citizen, than you are by an immigrant, right? 44% of the folks who are being detained by ICE have zero criminal record, right? They don't even have as much as a parking ticket. But this is the rhetoric that we're hearing?
Right. So you're talking about propaganda right now. I mean, technically, any form of government could use propaganda, right?
Exactly.
But you're saying that's one of the hallmarks of fascism, is that the overuse or the extreme use of propaganda.
And in particular, the use of propaganda to obfuscate reality, right? To make reality so opaque, or so something that we can't really understand or see, right, that it allows people to justify what is happening to other folks. And that is where the violence of fascism comes in.
That dehumanization piece.
Exactly, because the people who are sitting there standing by allowing it to happen think it should.
Okay, so I'm following the bouncing ball here, Dr. Turner. I think we have a republic, right? A democratic republic. Allegedly, we have a democratic republic. And we have never, ever had a truly multi-ethnic or multi-racial, if you buy the paradigm of race, democracy. We've never had that.
No.
And that's something that we allegedly strive for, right? I don't know. I feel like we've always had this oligarchical piece. We've always had this feature to our democracy, which is that it's a predatory capitalist model where the which I do think I've seen get more extreme over the course of my lifetime. Like you see the Citizens United decision, this idea that corporations are people. And so it does feel like we're shifting more towards an authoritarian model. Although I would say, okay, yeah, it is a racist country. We were built on stolen land, which many nations are. We haven't lived up our original Constitution. You and I would not be considered humans, or not full humans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it felt like during for a time, we were moving towards the promise of what we said we were. And now it feels like we've turned the other way and we're more blatantly oligarchical. I mean, just watching the billionaires lined up at the inauguration, it did feel like we're going the other direction. We're embracing authoritarianism. We're getting to not the hint of fascism, but the actual full-on practice. And the kidnapping of human beings in the street by masked people definitely feels like an escalation in that direction.
No, it absolutely is. And I think to your point, kind of returning to that inauguration moment where the billionaires were lined up in, I think the most clear example of class solidarity we've ever seen, right? Behind Trump. One of the things that not only, right, like people who are those quote unquote oligarchs, but those people in power, one of the things that they fear is a healthy, well-educated, critical populace, right? And that's where things started to go. It took several decades, a few million people, maybe tens of millions of people in the street. It took all of these different things. It took years of organizing, of changing how we think about things, of shifting policies, of, let's say, for here, an example, in California, right, like making ethnic studies a mandatory requirement,
is that going to hold?
That's a great question.
Is that going to hold? Because it feels like a lot of taking away of things we fought for. I know that's got to be hard for you. You've organized. You've been one of the people organizing for these changes.
Yes, I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our current climate right now, right? First and foremost is protecting our communities. Yeah. Materially protecting our communities, right? Making sure that our communities are safe and have the things that they need. Making sure for undocumented folks that they are getting the resources that they need. Making sure for our Black folks, right, that they're not being over-policed and targeted, especially now that you have this growing police presence and all of these different things. So yes, right, like protecting our communities is number one priority. In addition to protecting our communities, protecting our wins, right? Like protecting the things that we did get, the civil rights gains that we do have, whether we're talking about here in Los Angeles, things like the Black Student Achievement Plan at LAUSD, or we're talking things across the state, like being able to protect the UC system or the CSU system and all of the students that come through it, right? So protecting our folks is a big piece of like blocking what is happening to our communities, to our institutions, and really trying to build out power right from there. So Miriam Kaba and some of the folks over at Interrupting Criminalization, Andrea Ritchie and other folks, they came out with this really cool workbook. It's called Block and Build, but Make It Abolitionist, right? And in this workbook, they sort of work through all of the different things that community organizers, people who are working for social change can do, right, to stop like a fascist regime right now, right? So whether or not we're talking about, working to limit the growth of policing powers, whether or not we're talking about stopping the continued advancement, right, of ICE, whether we're talking about working to build different coalitions, right, for people who normally wouldn't agree with each other to begin advocating for policy either locally, statewide, or nationally. These are some of the things that's happening, right? There's one bill that's being introduced in California State Legislature now that I'll get the bill number in just a second, that essentially would force all law enforcement agencies or all law enforcement personnel to show their face and to be able to identify themselves. I know
that's Wiener's bill, right? Scott Wiener's bill. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that yesterday. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea, and we'll look at some other examples and how we can get our hands on this Block and Build workbook when we come forward. We're talking with Dr. David Turner. You're invited in 800-920-1580. I'm Dominique DePrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You ready?
Somebody make some noise in this joint.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates its 4th anniversary this year on Juneteenth.
Here we go again.
Hard to believe 4 years has gone by so fast.
Oh my God.
But here we are, still standing, still loving and serving our people as best we can.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
To celebrate our 4th anniversary, we have 4 big events, and you're invited to all of them.
She got a lot to say. Let's do this.
Let's get it on! On Wednesday, June 18th, we go live on C-SPAN for the 2nd consecutive year with our Climate Justice Plus Black Health Symposium. Tavis Smiley will moderate an all-star panel of thinkers and influencers as we continue our vitally important climate justice work.
Hey, Tavis Smiley, talk about.
On Thursday, June 19th, you're invited to join us as we celebrate Juneteenth and our 4th anniversary. There will be plenty of food, fun, great music, good vibes, and all of your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts will be there.
Yeah, man.
Flip the beat. On Saturday, June 21st, there are 2 big events you're invited to attend.
I can't wait to hear it.
This year, KBLA Talk 1580 continues its annual partnership with the Empowerment Congress for a community celebration and dialogue to educate, engage, and empower. This year's theme is Resilience in the Face of Chaos.
Can't wait to see what's up next.
Y'all ain't ready for this.
And new this year is our State of Black Women in Los Angeles Symposium, moderated by Dominique diprimaradio, with a luncheon to follow. Dominique will be leading a dialogue with some of the most impactful Black women leaders in Los Angeles, and you're invited to join.
This is it.
All of these events are free, but seating is limited, so you must register in advance at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can find all the details you need about each event.
Check it out.
It's our 4th anniversary, and we would love to celebrate it with you.
I love you guys so much. There's nothing you can do about it.
We're KBLA Talk 1580.
The only black talk radio station west of the Mississippi.
Thank you for having our black.
Happy anniversary, KBLA!
Love you. Love you.
Time is up. The IRS is in full collection mode for 2025, issuing liens, levies, and garnishments to anyone who has a past tax debt or unfiled tax returns. Don't wait till it's too late. Your paycheck and bank accounts are at risk of being seized. Call now and stop the collection process today. If you're living check to check, no matter how much you're making, you still may qualify for the Fresh Start programs offered by the IRS to reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. It's just a 5-minute call to get your options, and it's free. If you owe back taxes, have years of unfiled tax returns under audit, have a wage or bank levy, or finally just want to sleep better, business or personal, call the experts at Republic Tax Relief while there's still time. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, and tough. This veteran-owned company has the fight you need to take on the IRS. Don't go at it alone. The call is free. Call their hotline number now, 800-259-4546. That's 800-259-4546. Find out if you qualify today. Call 800-259-4546 or go to republictaxrelief.com.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique diprimaradio on First Things First.
Right now, Dr. David Turner is with me in the studio. And, of course, I got us all off on a tangent talking about what's happening to America partly because it reminds me right now when my dad, the late Mary Baraka, used to always talk about the Sisyphus syndrome, where we roll the rock up the hill and then it rolls back down on us. And I always say if you've taken 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, you're still making progress. But in this moment, it can be challenging to remember that and to stay in the fight in a robust way, in a fearless way. And so you talk about this workbook about block and build, and I'd like to know, how do we get our hands on this, and what your takeaways are, because I think that you're pretty fearless, and to me the only answer to this moment is to be fearless.
Well, yeah. I think it's important to name that it is, even in this moment of being fearless right now, that my predecessors and ancestors have had to fight through much worse conditions in much more terrifying ways to achieve any of the things that I've experienced, right? Or to achieve any of the things that I may call regular now. So there was this really interesting, TikTok video I had seen not too long ago. I can't remember the guy's name who posted it, but he had said that in the long history of, what we've experienced as like white supremacy, that right now that this is the best it's been. Right. And even though we're in this deeply fascist regime, I'm just like, wow, that's hard to believe. But yeah, right. Like, because, right, like people have done that work of pushing the needle and pushing the needle. And, Dr. King has said that, we do ultimately bend the arc to, or the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. Right. So I do believe that is true. And as an organizer, right, like it is my job to, to not only necessarily have hope, but to practice hope.
Yeah.
Right. That hope is a discipline. Right. As Miriam Kaba would say. So with that being said, right, like if we are going to sort of practice hope as a discipline, right, that means that we have to call the world what it is, right, and then organize for a better one, right, to build for a better one, to work with our communities, right, in order to make this happen. And that, I think, is such an important part of what it means not only to have hope, but to put our faith not in these institutions, but in the people. Right. I have faith that the people, we gonna figure it out. Right. I don't have too much faith in these institutions, right? Because, they gonna do what they gonna do. Right.
Right, which many times is what they were built to do.
Exactly.
But when it go back to your point about being better now than in prior history, I think that's really important because I think there's this we're going to hell in a handbasket mentality.
Yeah.
And there's an epidemic of fear that paralyzes people, and we forget to note the progress. And then people say things like protest doesn't make any difference and voting doesn't matter. And even a sociologist friend was pointing out to me, if you look at the poverty rates right now, the number of people that get to eat is higher than it has been historically. Mm-hmm. Now, is there a huge gap between rich and poor? Yes.
Yes.
Is there predatory capitalism going on where you have people with more money than anyone needs or could even spend in a lifetime? Yes. But fewer people are starving than we've seen in the past.
Well, the reason why we're seeing such this almost jolting response from not only the right-wing regime, but just all of the sort of authoritarians and the punishment bureaucracy more broadly, right, is because we've been winning. Right? Like we've been not only have we been winning the narrative fight, but things were looking different, right? People were beginning to believe, right, that, hey, maybe we shouldn't be blowing up children for no reason, right? People were beginning to believe, right, that, spending billions and trillions of dollars on pointless wars was a bad thing, right? Like people were beginning to believe these things, right? So again, right, like as I had mentioned earlier, this is like the colonial regimes, the imperial regimes' last stand, right? And they're trying to take down the world swinging. And that's what we're witnessing and experiencing now. And that's why it feels so particularly jarring. It feels really bad because this is them trying to cling on to the little bit of power that they had left, right? 2020 scared the living everything out of these people, right? You had all these folks who were so clear about the fact that the policing is not necessarily the thing that keeps them safe. You had these people who were so clear, right, that those folks who are actually benefiting from inequality are the ones who are becoming billionaires. You have folks who were so clear, right, that this deep wealth inequality is the primary thing, right, that is driving all of, or not all, but a lot of society's issues, right? You have people who were clear about environmental racism, people who were clear about some of these impacts, right, that scared the people in power. So they responded. And they responded by inundating us with propaganda. They responded by inundating us with these deeply harmful ideas. They responded by funding these funding and amplifying these larger right-wing platforms and regimes. Right? They responded by doing all of this because they saw that we were winning. So with that being said, right, it's important for us to remember that if we are going to continue to make progress, we have to stay outside, right? We have to stay engaged. And this doesn't always mean just, hey, I'm going to show up to a protest with a sign. This means getting involved with a local organization. This means working to build power with everyday regular people. This means actually talking to your neighbor, right? And knowing who they are, right? Like this means, right, making sure that we can take care of one another, because it's in those practices where we're going to find power.
Yeah, it's well said. And I've said that all along, that I think especially the attacks on universities, the defunding of Harvard and Columbia, and now even our secondary and elementary schools here in the state of California, I believe it's because if you look at those data and those polling numbers, the people that are voting for Trump are the ones that don't have the education. So, of course, you're going to attack education. As people become more educated, they become more quote-unquote woke. So if your mission is to keep people asleep, then you have to attack those. And, as you pointed out, those institutions have their own issues. But the fact that you're trying to stop the educational institutions from educating people and choking off foreign exchange, to me, that's exactly an illustration of your point. We've been winning, and one of the ways we win is by educating folks. We've got news, traffic, and sports right now. Then more from Dr. David Turner and you on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. We're following a developing story this morning. The White House is warning Americans not to travel to Israel, Iraq, or Iran. This as President Trump mulls over whether the U.S. will do airstrikes, what some see as officially entering into the Middle East war. NBC News was with the president yesterday.
They should have done the deal. I told them, do the deal.
Meanwhile, President Trump posted to social media around noon Tuesday, "We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran," which NBC News says is questionable since the U.S. does not have any aircraft involved in the airstrikes going back and forth between Iran and Israel right now. And not everyone thinks this is a good idea. There are congressional members on both sides of the aisle that are trying to limit America's involvement in the conflict. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie has introduced legislation arguing this is not our war. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Is this the title? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron James is talking like he's coming back with the Lakers to play his 23rd NBA season. While filming a new commercial for Amazon called What's Next, LeBron told the Associated Press that his main objective in the offseason is to get his left knee healthy. That comment is a clear indication that LeBron is planning to play next season. LeBron suffered a sprained ligament in his knee during Game 5 of the Lakers' season-ending loss to Minnesota in the first round of the playoffs. The injury did not require surgery. LeBron, who turns 41 in December, has been doing treatment and rehab since the injury. LeBron's return is not yet official. He has until June 26th to accept a player option for next season worth $56.2 million. Kevin Durant has told the Phoenix Suns that if they trade him, here are the 3 teams he would like to go to: Miami, San Antonio, or Houston. Durant will be 37 in September. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. Let's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to play? Then jump into the LA 84 Foundation's Free Playday Block Party, a community celebration for all ages, including live music, dancing, LA's pro sports teams, great local food trucks, plus special giveaways for you to take home. Enjoy an exciting, fun-filled day for the entire family. Join us Saturday, June 28th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 2141 West Adams Boulevard. To register, go to la84.org. We'll see you Saturday, June 28th at LA 84 Foundation's Free Playday Block Party.
We're not for everybody, but we're for everybody. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're here with Dr. David Turner. Man, crazy things going on. Supreme Court just upheld a Tennessee law restricting gender-affirming care for minors. Huge setback for trans LGBTQ plus rights. And not a surprise, but certainly a setback. You mentioned, Dr. David Turner, you mentioned this idea of propaganda. What is propaganda?
Yeah, there's this really good book. It just came out by in the New Press by a guy named Alec. I'm gonna try to make sure I get his last name right. Karakatanis, I believe it is. And in this book, he goes over the last sort of 4 to 5 years of the ways how liberal media, not necessarily conservative media, because we know what conservative media is going to do, right? The ways how liberal media essentially works as a parroting tool to parrot the ideas and the wishes of what he calls the punishment bureaucracy. Right, so these are people who are police officers, who are judges, people who support, right, like what we call mass incarceration. And what he does is he walks us through the ways how in these stories people are essentially contradicting themselves and what it is that they're trying to say in order to get people to believe that you need police in order to keep you safe. To give you a quick example of this, a very direct example from California politics, right? Not only property crimes, but also drug crimes have been at historic lows, right, here in the state of California, right? You know, where people, you know, are not necessarily getting, you know, beat up and robbed, or, you know, are not necessarily experiencing the same levels of, you know, direct harm from other people as they were in, let's say, like the 1990s or even the early to mid 2000s, right? Again, historic lows. But what we saw in the state of California was the passing of Proposition 36, which sought to, you know, provide more felony prosecutions for property crimes, specifically like retail theft, as well as prosecuting the fentanyl crisis, right? So if we look at an example like Proposition 36, we were outspent on the no side and the yes side, right? Almost 2-to-1. They spent, I believe, about $17 million on the yes side for Prop 36. We spent about like $7 million on the no side, right? In addition to that, for years, right, directly after the 2020 uprisings, right, that took place in response to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all of those different things, right, when there were calls to defund the police, we got news story after news story after news story after news story of all of this rampant crime here in California, whether we're talking about, what was it at first, like the catalytic converters and those thefts, or whether we're talking about the smash and grab retail theft ring.
Where are all those pictures now?
Exactly, right. Like, one of the things that that Karakatanis does is he talks about how they take these particular examples and magnify them as if they are representative of what's happening across the country, right? Or as if they're representative of the scale in which, right, they're being described as. And right, how news outlets, right, would use some of these examples and would then use terms like running rampant in the street, or
Right.
would use terms
LA
like
is on fire.
exactly, right, and would say these things
Yeah.
in a way that is trying to drum up fear to get people to invest in what he calls the punishment bureaucracy. So like, no, we need to give police more resources to address these issues. Now, this is the conundrum, right? If we're giving cops more money to address those issues, right, but also we also are at historic lows, it always ends up being a win-win for cops. Oh, well, we're at historic lows, and that's because we've been suppressing crime. But we don't have enough money to suppress crime, so we need y'all to give us more money. And it's just more and more and more and more, while everybody else receives less and less and less. And this is a part of the challenge of what propaganda is, because it allows us to think that punishment is the only way that we achieve real safety, when we know that in order to achieve real safety, we have to invest in people, we have to invest in communities, we have to invest in education, healthcare, jobs. Those are the things that actually keep communities safe.
And I think that is happening really in this moment with these protests. So that is the combination of what you were talking about regarding authoritarianism or fascism and the propaganda, and this idea of cop-aganda are meeting in the coverage of the LA protest.
Yes.
I've had so many people calling me, "Are you okay? Oh my gosh, LA's on fire. You can't go anywhere." Most of the city, you walk around, you wouldn't even know anything was happening.
I'll be like, look, y'all, there have been times where LA was actually on fire, right? Like, this is not that, know, and even then, right? Like, those different times were uprisings in response to state violence, right? Now, first and foremost, right, one of the things that I always want to make sure to do is, always like to just make sure I intervene in this like good protester versus bad protester idea, because it's like, quite honestly, it is the righteous indignation of our people, of our communities, right, that ends up becoming the fuel that moves movements, right, to creating the types of systemic changes that we want to see.
I mean,
right?
I understand what you're saying. You can't tell people how to protest. We unjust laws were meant to be broken and changed. But at the same time, when people smash windows and take stuff or set stuff on fire, even those annoying Waymo cars, it doesn't help. That doesn't help.
So I think to that point, right, does it always help the cause? That is left up for debate. Political scientists all over the country have been, I think, like not necessarily baffled with this question, but I think tackling this question for a while. There's one political scientist, her name is Juliet Hooker. She wrote this really interesting and innovative piece about uprisings and riots as something called democratic sacrifice for democratic repair. So is it because the people are uprising that you begin to see systemic changes, right? So again, right, that piece of it is up for debate. I think what matters most is the fact that we have people who are now in the streets who care about these issues, right? Regardless of how they're addressing it, they care about these issues. What matters to me the most is what are we doing to work to organize folks so that way we as a broader movement, right, can work to transform the ways how the state is engaging us, right? How the Fed is engaging us, right? So what does that look like? Or what do I mean by like, how do we work together? First and foremost, right, like, how do we work to build coalitions with people, right? How do we make sure that, you know, communities who, you know, are seen as not being aligned with one another, how do we work to build those relationships to make sure that we're at least locked in on a particular issue? How do we make sure that we have a unified demand and that we push this, not like the state of California, the people who we know we can push, right, whether it's the city of LA or the county of LA, however, right, like to enact some demands that are actionable, right? I think the one thing that's coming out of the state where like pushing ICE agents to like, you know, you have to show us your face, I think that's one particular way, right? Another thing that happened was in the city of Glendale, they canceled their contracts with ICE, right, to prevent, you know, their facilities from being used by ICE agents, right? There are other organizations like CURB, Communities United for a Responsible Budget. They're currently working to ensure that we don't reopen California state prisons to be, and these are, and when I say reopen, I mean that there's been work to close a whole bunch of California state prisons that were essentially sitting there empty, right? That these are not reopened in any capacity in order to support what ICE has going on, right? So there are so many different ways that we can work to push back against this type of fascism, that we can work to push back against these issues. And now that people are in the streets and upset about it, yes, come on. I'm glad you're out here. Let's begin building, right? Because that is, quite frankly, the only thing that's going to make sure that we have the power, right? So while, again, right, like we can make arguments about the productivity of, you know, people responding to, you know, the violence that they're experiencing from the state in any kind of way, right? What I'm more interested in is the fact that people are outside and people care about their communities enough to do something about it. So now that we know that, right now, let's begin building together. That's what matters to me the most, right? I'm not tripping on, you know, like a driverless car, you know, catching on fire because somebody's auntie just got snatched from a graduation. Right. I'm not super concerned about, you know, the windows at a particular store because somebody's dad was taken away. Right. And even with the military presence here, right, the first person detained in this with this military occupation happening was a black dude who was minding his business. Right. You know, so with all that being said, this type of regime, right, is going to do things that is intentionally provocative, that is trying to provoke a response, that is trying to essentially show the rest of the constituency of MAGA, right, that look, these people are unruly and we're going to enact all these harmful policies against them. And for us, right, like it is up to us to be able to mobilize our communities, to protect our communities, and to essentially resist and block anything that they try to do as much as we possibly can. And as long as we can get people outside, as long as we can keep people outside, as long as we can fight back against this regime, I think that is going to be the most important thing.
Dr. David Turner is our guest. I'm Dominique DiPrima, and this right here, KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Every mother deserves a healthy and joyous pregnancy and birth. And every baby deserves to thrive. That's why the Los Angeles County Abundant Birth Project is here. The Abundant Birth Project is a guaranteed income program that provides cash during pregnancy to pregnant individuals at the highest risk of preterm and low birth rate babies. Although program enrollment has closed, our commitment to Black joy and thriving continues. Through tailored services that foster mental well-being and community-based resources, we provide care and support during pregnancy and after the baby is born to help build brighter futures for our families. Join us in celebrating abundant births in LA County. For more information, please visit abundantbirthproject.org. abundantbirthproject.org. Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit caspvolunteer.org. Protect yourself from Medicare card scams. Scammers may call, email, or even knock on your door claiming they need your Medicare info, asking for money or threatening to cancel your benefits. Don't fall for it. It's a scam. Remember, Medicare doesn't need to verify your information. They already have it. Medicare won't charge you for a new card and will never threaten to cancel benefits. Check your Medicare statements for suspicious charges and report scams to the California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080. We're here to help.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DiPrima right now.
Right now, we're talking with Dr. David Turner, and when we got into an in-depth conversation during News, Traffic, and Sports, because you said you don't like to divide the good protesters versus the bad protesters. It reminds me of the good black people versus the bad black people. At the same time, I was pointing out that, smashing windows and taking stuff, burning Waymos or whatever people are doing, doesn't help. Doesn't help the narrative. And yet there's so much mis and disinformation at this point. I feel like, and I just said this off the mic, that if we had a nonviolent protester like a Martin Luther King today, Trump would say he was burning buildings or, that he was violent, that he was vicious and violent, just like they're saying these undocumented folks are criminals when, as you pointed out, 44% don't have as much as a traffic ticket. And just like they're saying that LA is burning when in fact LA is not burning. And they're able to use those lies to bring in the Marines, bring in the National Guard. So, I don't know. I mean, I on the one hand, I think we should be more disciplined, but on the other hand, you wonder, how do you make change without breaking the rules?
Well, I think this is a particular point that different social movement scholars, different organizers have made, right? That the idea of violence is like elastic, right? Like people stretch the meaning of what is and what isn't violent all the time, right? To give you a very brief example of what this looks like, right? The protesters, right? The student organizers who were organizing encampments. In particular, I'll speak at UCLA because that's where I work, right? They were in those encampments, right? You had Jewish students in those encampments celebrating Passover. You had people organizing book clubs. There was one person who was like allergic to a banana, so they wouldn't let people bring bananas into the space because like they didn't want that person to be harmed, right? Like there was such a level of care, right, that was being provided in that space. But those students were called violent for the encampment that they set up. But when counter protesters came and literally beat them for 3 hours, right? That was just seen as a response. And then the very next day, when the police tore down the encampment, right? That was, them cleaning up the scene and not, students walking away with bruises and, being beaten, right? Like that wasn't seen as violence, right? So what gets said as violence, what gets seen as violence is elastic based on who is creating the definition, right? And that I think is where, as organizers, we have to be clear about the fact that we can be as disciplined as we want to be, right? The state is going to paint us as violent anyway. So how we work to counter those arguments, how we work to shift the narrative, right? How we work to, I guess, bring out our own propaganda, right, is going to be important because, like, in order to engage the state, right, like, we have to be ready to spin our own narratives, right? What made Dr. King successful was that he understood the power, and not just Dr. King, but also folks in the SCLC and the people who were organizing nonviolent civil disobedience, was that they understood the power of optics and propaganda, right? And they were able to leverage it and use it, right, to manipulate the United States, because there was so much other stuff going on that the United States was trying to portray an image of, and they were showing that it was very contradictory, right? So for us, right, like, we need to be able to assess and identify what are our issues, and then how do we help to elevate the contradiction, so that way, right, when it comes time for us to engage in organizing work, or when we do our direct actions, we're doing them in a way that maximizes the intent of our demands, and that also illustrates the contradictions.
Dr. David Turner, that's my guest, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Oh, these polymers aren't as flexible as batch K3.
Researcher Laurie is stretched thin.
Did you get the vulcanization analytics from V66? Wait, are these rubber scores from last week?
She needs to hire new lab technicians so she can bounce back into her old self.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Our matching platform lets you spend less time searching and more time connecting with candidates. Redeem your $75 credit at Indeed.com/credit. Terms and conditions apply.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
Yes, indeed. Dr. David Turner is here. And, you know, we just have a few minutes here, so I want to make sure you say what you came to say and that you let folks know where they can follow your work. You're doing a lot of great work. I wanted to commend you on your presentation for the mayor of Los Angeles about the LA City budget and some of the really important and eye-opening research that you brought forth in the midst of sharing the People's Budget Survey and all that. Great job of presenting to the mayor. I'm sure it was very impactful. I just want to make sure you have a chance to say what you came here to say, because I got 50 million things I could throw at you.
It's all good. It's all good. First and foremost, you can find me on social media at dr.dct3. You can also follow the research project that I work to direct with folks like Kelly Lauder Hernandez and Mark Vestal over at UCLA, called the $1 Million Hoods Project. It's at $1 Million Hoods. You can also support some of the work that I do statewide by following the Alliance for Boys and Men of Color. You can find us on social media at Alliance BMOC. Now, in addition to that, right, like the work that Dominique DiPrima was just mentioning was with the People's Budget with Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. Please follow Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. And if you are Black and you're looking for a political home, right, BLM LA is right there, Center for Black Power, right there in Leimert Park, every second Sunday, right? There are general body meetings, right? Like, if you want to engage in organizing and don't know where to start, that is a great place to start. There are organizations and community folks all across Los Angeles who have specialties in organizing and doing the things that they want to do to change things, and they are there for us, right, to begin building power, right? So if you don't have a political home, find you a political home, right? There's an organization for everybody, right? There's an organization specifically for Black immigrants. So if you are a Black immigrant right now and you're scared and you want to make sure that you can find ways to support yourself, there's the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, right? That is right there for you, right? To find support and a home. If you are working to try to protect queer and trans young people in your schools right now, there's the Genders and Sexualities Alliance Network, right? That is right there, that works in schools, right? To be able to support those young people, right? We need to make sure that we're protecting some of our other organizations that are coming under, federal assault, like CHIRLA, which is the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights in Los Angeles, right? We need to make sure that we're supporting some of these grassroots organizations and initiatives, because, right, like, these are some of the institutions that we can work to build coalitions with to fight back against this regime, right? So if you want to fight back, right, everything worthwhile that you do is done with other people. So tap in with other people, tap in with organizations, right? And let's begin building together. If you don't learn anything else from this, right, is that, no cool stuff is done alone, right? Like, you got to tap in with other people. I'll close on this African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And in order for us to keep making progress, in order for us to keep building, we got to do it together.
Yeah, and I think getting into an organization is also a great way to fight being completely overwhelmed. Are we going to war with Iran? Are we, are the Marines still here? Oh, he's sending 2,000 more. What? They just took away transgender kids' right to care. All of these things. If you're in an organization, you can focus on one action or one issue at a time and be effective rather than overwhelmed. So I think that's great advice. And Dr. DCT3, that's where we find you?
Yes.
Dr. DCT3, let's go together. That's the thing to do. There's certainly work to be done, and I love that you framed it in the discipline of hope. The discipline of hope, not disciplined imagination, not just succumbing to whatever's out there in the media ethos. Dr. David Turner, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to do some wealth building next. And, of course, we are taking your phone calls. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. We're following a developing story this morning. The White House is warning Americans not to travel to Israel, Iraq, or Iran. This as President Trump mulls over whether the U.S. will do airstrikes, what some see as officially entering into the Middle East war. NBC News was with the president yesterday.